Before you is a modern calendar calculator of lunar phases. It is not a historical document from which historical conclusions or judgments can be made. However, it gave me another hint that the Julian calendar was adopted specifically in the year 1500. We all know that the author of the Julian calendar is Julius Caesar, who introduced it on January 1st, 45 BC. The rule of the Julian calendar is very simple. All years have 365 days, except every fourth year. Leap years, which have 366 days, with one day added in February. To correctly account for every fourth year, they need a serial number. But Caesar's Julian calendar had no starting point. 45 BC was not the starting point of the Julian calendar in the same way that the birth of Christ is the starting point of our era. How then did they mark every fourth year of the Julian calendar? Historians say, years were marked by consuls who took office on January 1st and thereby synchronized the Julian calendar. That is, a consul takes office and announces to the Romans, "I have taken office," which means today is January 1st and the new year, and this year will be a leap year. It turns out that the consuls taking office determined whether a year would be a leap or a non-leap year. I'll say right away, this is a modern interpretation. Among ancient authors, the connection between leap years and consuls is absent. The Julian calendar, of course, could not fail to have a starting point for chronology, and it exists, the year 1500, naturally, of our era. The mystery of the year 1500. Many of you are already familiar with my reconstruction of history, but neither you, nor I until recently. No one noticed that the year 1500, which according to the rules of the Julian calendar, every fourth year, should be a leap year, might not have been a leap year, and not because the calculator formed it that way. By the way, according to the rules of the official Julian calendar, not my reconstruction, the calculator gave an error for February 1500. It should be a leap year and, accordingly, have 29 days in February. But if it was the first year of the new calendar and simultaneously a kind of year zero, as I explained in this diagram I compiled 6 to 7 years ago, then the divisible by 4 without remainder rule does not apply to it, since 0 is not divided by 4. I checked this and other similar calculators for compliance with real historical calendars. They exactly correspond to both the Julian period before 1582 and its Gregorian period from 1582 to our time. The moon phases coincide day for day with historical calendars, where moon phases are marked separately. It is a pity that there's not a single historical calendar of the year 1500 in the public domain, which according to my reconstruction began with a new moon, just like this modern online calculator. If it does exist, lying somewhere in, say, the Vatican archives, and it has 28 days in February, it would be direct proof that the year 1500 was the beginning and the year zero of the Julian calendar. The 8-year discrepancy. Another important observation. I have also talked about this in my films. In the 16th century, the difference between the Greek chronology, from the creation of the world, and the Latin, from the birth of Christ, was exactly 5,500 years, not 5,508 years as it is today. The question arises, why were these 8 years added at all? Apparently, later, this round difference was removed so it wouldn't lead to certain thoughts. For example, that both the Latin and Greek calendars were Julian calendars, with one starting point and identical month names. They had one starting point. It was just called differently. Year 1500. Chronology from Adam for Latin/Catholics. Year 7000. From the creation of the world for Greeks/Orthodox. For both, the calendar was established in the same year, 1500, which corresponded to the year 7000, the so-called God's Week, of 1,000 earthly years per day. The only difference was that the Catholics began the year on January 1st, and the Orthodox on September 1st. In everything else, the calendars matched. January 1st for Catholics and January 1st for Orthodox was the same day. The 10-day difference, now 13 days, only appeared after Pope Gregory XIII Gregorian reform in 1582. The history extenders. Now watch the hands of the history extenders. That's what I call them, the extenders of Christian history. Pope Julius II, also known in the secular world as Gaius Julius Caesar Octavian Augustus. Both were famous commanders according to official history. According to my reconstruction, they are the same person. Pope Julius II could only introduce the Julian calendar if his pontificate was not from 1503 to 1513, but began and ended before and after the year 1500. I have solved this riddle and will talk about it in detail in the next film. I will only say that the pontificates of Alexander VI and Pius III were not before, but after the pontificate of Julius II. They were swapped by the history extenders no earlier than the second half of the 17th century. As for those 8 years, in Muscovy, the round difference of 5,500 years persisted until the mid-17th century. In a collection of Slavic and Russian manuscripts published in 1848, a work from 1615 by an unknown church author is mentioned, who finished his work with the words, "Written in the year 7123 from the creation of the world, and 1623 from the incarnation of the Son of God." To which the compiler of the collection noted, "Instead of 1623, read 1615, since in the 17th century we believed that the birth of Christ fell on the year 5500, not 5508 from the creation of the world." And there are quite a few examples of this. The correction of history. In my book Another History of the Roman Empire, I explained that the Gregorian calendar became scientific proof for the antiquity of March 21st as the day of the vernal equinox in deep antiquity. Along with pushing back the date of the equinox, the entire history of Christianity was pushed back into the depths of the centuries. Pope Gregory XIII placed the Greek muse of history, Clio, on his tomb for a reason. He didn't just fix the calendar. He fixed history, replacing the real history with one that never happened but is now in all textbooks. Evidence from printing and coinage. To hide the fact that the calendar began in 1500, history was rewritten and backdated. Take the astronomer Johannes Regiomontanus. In 1474, he allegedly published his ephemerides for 1475 to 1506. If we look at the page for the year 1500, it says the year is a leap year. This seems to contradict my reconstruction. However, if you look at a real 15th century printing sample, block printing/xylography, it looks nothing like these ephemerides, which were clearly printed using 18th or 19th century lead-type technology. Regiomontanus officially died in 1476, yet a calendar for 1513 was published under his name in 1512. My explanation? He had to be buried before 1500, so no one would think the ephemerides were published retrospectively. Finally, consider coinage. There are almost no coins or medals with a date earlier than 1500. The few that exist are often fakes or have backdated stamps, like the medal of Pope Sixtus IV with 1481 stamped on it later. For science, statistics are direct proof. The year 1500 is the true beginning of the Julian calendar under Pope Julius II Augustus.